Good morning, my name is Josh from CyclonesOZ, and here is your detailed forecast update for January 5th, 2025. We've got a lot to get through today, including heavy rainfall still persistent across the far north and central coasts of Queensland. We've got severe thunderstorms on the forecast of the southeast of Queensland as well. We're going to touch on that rainfall event that's still on the cards, more or less, for New South Wales and Victoria, the heat extending across the interior parts of Australia, tropical weather for Western Australia and the Northern Territory, and two tropical lows currently forecast offshore from Western Australia and the Northern Territory. All of that plus more coming up in today's weather forecast. If you're brand new to the channel, please consider subscribing, but let's get stuck straight into things today with central and far northern Queensland. We'll just start things off over in the far north of Queensland, quickly get the forecast over and done with up there. Some heavy rainfall has been reported over the last 24 hours, 225mm falling at Rex Creek outside of the Daintree rainforest. I think that might be a little bit of a high number, especially considering a lot of the stations around it picked up about 60 or 70mm, but considering the nature of the showers that came ashore, I do not doubt it for a second. Plenty of rainfall also expected for the Cassowary Coast. They missed out yesterday, but we are expecting more showers and storms to come throughout the course of today. And if we switch it over to the convective forecast models, not wasting any time with the low resolution main forecast models here, but the convective forecast models suggesting a line of decent showers to begin materializing offshore from the coastline, collecting the coastline at about midday to about 4 p.m. These showers here bringing heavy falls to the Cassowary Coast up to Cairns by around 6 p.m. tonight, and then this heavier rainfall moving into the Daintree rainforest as we get later on into this afternoon and into this evening. We're expecting moderate to heavy showers to continue throughout the remainder of today and extend in towards tomorrow as well. In fact, the rainfall is really going to pick up throughout tomorrow afternoon and evening, especially for the Cassowary Coast and areas between Port Douglas down to Ingham, expecting some heavy falls possible, especially outside of Innisfail and Tully, potentially tomorrow afternoon and evening. Now, this is in stark contrast to what you're probably expecting on the main forecast, because this is what the actual forecast models, the low resolution, more accurate, or I use that term very loosely, the more accurate ones are expecting hardly anything in the way of rainfall. Now, yes, the convective forecast models tend to overestimate dramatically in terms of the rainfall that is expected, but when it comes to far north Queensland, there's not too much in the way of overestimating that you can feasibly do. In fact, the more rainfall you predict, generally speaking, the more accurate it is going to be, unless you predict an absolute copious number, which is what the Axis can come up with sometimes. Let's take a look at those rainfall accumulations. Like I said, the rainfall picking up again later on this afternoon, and then once again from Monday morning into Monday afternoon. I do think that the numbers here might be a little bit on the higher side. 250mm over the next 24 hours is a little bit unlikely. In fact, that's very unlikely, but I would not be surprised if we saw triple-figure rainfall accumulations outside of Innisfail and Tully, especially tomorrow into the 9 a.m. on Tuesday, because some heavy falls are possible from this rainfall that's going to come through up here. Cairns expecting about 30 or 40mm. Again, I think that might be a little bit on the higher side, depending on what showers come through for the Cairns area. I reckon they'll get somewhere between sort of that 5 and 15mm mark. The Daintree rainforest up towards Port Douglas and then Cooktown, nothing too much in the way of rainfall expected there. I still wouldn't be surprised if some locations picked up about 50 or 60mm, but again, the bulk of the rainfall coming through for the Cassowary Coast outside of Cairns, right down towards Cardwell. I don't think Cardwell or Ingham are going to pick up too much in the way of rainfall, and then Atherton and Ravenshoe as well, about as far inland as this rainfall is going to penetrate. Still, though, some okay falls expected out there, probably about 20mm apiece, but like I said, this heavy rainfall collecting itself right up against the coastline by the looks of things, at least on this forecast here, and as such, those rainfall accumulations are going to be quite high indeed. And yeah, just throughout Monday, on this forecast here, those rainfall accumulations really are looking quite decent. It doesn't look like the convective forecast wants me to have a look at rainfall accumulations by the looks of things, but yeah, some significant falls are certainly possible. Again, this is not an unreasonable forecast that the Axis G3 convective forecast model is picking up for the North Queensland sector. I wouldn't be surprised if rainfall like this did materialise, but again, I think 250mm might be a little bit on the bullish side. In the risks of, or talking about the risks of flooding, there's not an awful risk in place. If they do pick up 250mm tonight and into tomorrow night, then there will certainly be the chance of some minor or moderate riverine flooding, but I don't think we're going to get that much rainfall, and as such, I don't really think that there's going to be a flooding risk up in the north of Queensland. But I certainly reckon that they're going to pick up quite a lot more rainfall than what the EastMWF and the GFS forecast models are suggesting right now. I think tomorrow they're guaranteed to see more than 12.5mm. That's what the EastMWF is saying. The GFS also saying for 12.5mm, coincidentally, for pretty much an average across the North Queensland area. Then the Axis G3 is kind of the only one with its finger out by the looks of things, calling for up to about 50 or 60mm as you get down towards the coastline. Still, though, it does show you how unreliable some of these forecasts can be, and it also goes to show that this is just a forecast at the end of the day. Things can change, things often do change, and there are multiple solutions and multiple possibilities with every single weather weather event. The Axis G3 convective forecast model, which is one that we've been talking about for the length of time, the one that I've been saying is going to predict that copious amount of rainfall time and time again, that's the one that I'd be following, at least for the North Queensland area. It's a rubbish setup for forecasting rainfall around pretty much everywhere else around Australia, but for North Queensland, very tropical location, it can do a wonderful job. Rainfall easing off Tuesday afternoon by the looks of things. There'll still be a few showers throughout Wednesday, then the rainfall pretty much completely clearing out of far North Queensland, at least for a couple of days. By Thursday afternoon, you can see Friday, Saturday, and Sunday expected to be dry. A couple of thunderstorms here and there expected Sunday afternoon by the looks of things, and same deal on Monday afternoon too. And then looking much further forward into the forecast period, we've got a couple of thunderstorms and showers on the forecast here and there, but nothing in the way of tropical low activity, nothing in the way of heavy rainfall activity either, right out to the 19th of January, at least on this forecast here. The GFS forecast model also suggesting not much in the way of heavy rainfall as well until much later on into mid-January, and that's when we're likely to see some kind of tropical low spin up, at least per the GFS solution. Now, we'll touch on this later on in the forecast update, but one thing's for sure, far North Queensland, beyond about Tuesday afternoon, will go about a week without any significant rainfall, and that includes the entirety of far North Queensland, including the Cape York Peninsula, extending right down to about Townsville or Proserpine even. Speaking of more central areas of Queensland, let's just quickly smash through the rainfall forecast there. Again, some incredible accumulations have been picked up around Proserpine overnight, and they've been nothing outstanding, only around sort of that 70 to 80 millimetre mark, but it's been on top of 200 millimetres over the last 48 hours. So, as such, the rainfall accumulations there now actually starting to become a little bit of a problem. 300 millimetres at some locations between Mackay and Proserpine over the last 3 days. Certainly now, they are at a risk of flooding. Thankfully, it looks like the rainfall there is going to continue to ease off throughout the course of today. It's just from these stagnant but convective blow-ups that are getting themselves jammed up against the coastline, and as such the rainfall they're really piling on, or really doing a great job at piling on. You can see some stagnant showers currently around the Proserpine area, kind of between Bowen and then Hamilton Island, and these showers here, they're nothing to shrug your shoulders at, considering that they are stagnant and peak rainfall accumulations are up to, or at least on this analysis here, 60 millimetres an hour. That's where they're getting that really heavy rainfall from. Thankfully, it looks like it will ease off throughout the course of today. If we take a look at the convective forecast models of this location of Queensland, you can see not much on the way of rainfall is on the forecast throughout the course of today and into tomorrow. Keep in mind that the forecast models have been going nuts for the rainfall over the past kind of 48 hours, especially the Axis convective model for the North Queensland sector, and as such the rainfall there has really matched the convective forecast model's prediction of about 200 millimetres. So it's another great example of how the convective models can do wonders for the forecast of the far north of Queensland, and I think it also paints a pretty good picture as why we should only use them in Queensland and parts of New South Wales, and only in far north Queensland and central Queensland when we're talking about rainfall, and only in certain situations. You get what I'm saying here, that the convective forecast models, they're great until they're not, and it certainly does take a bit of an eagle eye to kind of differentiate between when they are really good to use and when they aren't really good to use. That's a bit more nerd talk, and I could waffle about that for hours, but I'm choosing not to, just keep this video nice and simple and easily digestible this morning. In the way of rainfall, like I said, for the central coast of Queensland, beyond even today and right out into the future of the forecast as well, at least until probably next weekend, nothing in the way of rainfall is expected there, or nothing significant in the way of rainfall, I should say. Accumulations will still sort of be between that 2 and 10 millimetres widespread, with a couple of drops up to about 20 millimetres expected just from the remnants of showers that will be coming throughout the course of today. Expecting a nice thunderstorm outbreak to pop up sometime Saturday night by the looks of things. Bit of an onshore flow will spark some sea breeze thunderstorms along the central Queensland coastline on Saturday, and same deal with Sunday as well, a couple of sea breeze thunderstorms expected there. Proper outbreaks expected into next week though, Monday and Tuesday the 13th and 14th of January by the looks of things. Some proper outbreaks are expected, and then later on into the forecast period as well, a couple more severe thunderstorm outbreaks are expected, or at least on the forecast at this time. Again, we will keep a close eye on this. The other forecast models kind of flip-flopping on what they're expecting for the central Queensland coastline. You can see between the Axis G3 and the GFS forecast, there are pretty much nothing in the way of strong thunderstorms currently on the cards, or at least on the long-range forecast. So we'll take a look at the next week forecast as we get deeper in towards this coming week, because it'd be a little bit unwise to do that right now. In short, throughout the coming couple of days, those showers clearing out for the central Queensland coastline, then, like I said, those thunderstorms firing up by this weekend. Then beyond that, the forecast has become a little bit more uncertain. Nothing really interesting or standing out like a sore thumb, at least for me, on the central Queensland side of things. Southeastern Queensland is even more boring. I mean, if you're looking out for thunderstorms and stuff, it is really boring right now down there. They've had nothing in the way of a proper good severe thunderstorm outbreak around the scenic rim or the Brisbane area for a good couple couple of months now, since probably November is the last time I can remember one happening down there, which I guess has been good news. They haven't had any destructive thunderstorms this summer, which is certainly fantastic, but they are certainly now starting to experience some more drought-like conditions, especially around Brisbane, kind of isolated, and you can see it here on the drought monitoring map. Brisbane and the Gold Coast kind of isolated here in this kind of much drier pocket of the southeast of Queensland, just because they have been struggling on that rainfall. And then into the northern rivers of New South Wales, after that rainfall that they've had a couple of months ago, they're in full-blown drought conditions right now, just with the lack of rainfall that's been falling there over the last couple of months. You can see drought intensities now really starting to pick up in towards the moderate to severe categories up in the northeast of New South Wales into the northern rivers, and then further down the coast, even down towards Newcastle and Sydney, which is rather unfortunate, especially considering how much rainfall they got to start off the wet season. But again, we'll get to that in just a few moments. We're looking out for these thunderstorms here across the southeast of Queensland, and unfortunately there is nothing in the way of significant ones that are going to drop rainfall until at least Tuesday, where we might see a couple of thunderstorms around the Warwick area down towards Wollongara and Stanthorpe on the Queensland-New South Wales border. New South Wales actually expecting a bumper day for thunderstorms across Tuesday afternoon. You can see it here, plenty of storms expected to fire up into interior parts of the state, and especially in towards the northern rivers as well. It will be interesting to see exactly what happens in terms of the severity of these storms here. If you take a look at the Axis thunderstorm forecast model here, they're not really calling for anything absolutely standout crazy on Tuesday. There will be a couple of good thunderstorms here and there, especially into the northern rivers, and then a couple of good storms as well around Parkes and Orange and Young. Contrasting that with the Eastern Weather forecast model, that's kind of where the two strong zones of thunderstorms are expected to be, but we could be seeing thunderstorms right down to the Victoria-New South Wales border and out towards Borkle and Naring as well. Good thunderstorms do have the chance of dropping significant rainfall accumulations, but as with every thunderstorm outbreak on the forecast, the rainfall is going to be very hit and miss. Right now, rainfall, at least on the forecast, isn't looking too bad, at least for Tuesday and Wednesday. The rainfall across parts of New South Wales actually looking relatively healthy, between sort of the 20 to kind of 40 millimetres of the northern rivers, and then up to about 50 or 60 millimetres down as you get towards the coastline around Newcastle, Taree, Barrington Tops, and then right down towards Sydney up to about 100 millimetres is expected there. And that's going to be coming through from a bit of a rainfall event expected to fire up offshore from the coastline. We'll likely see a weak low pressure system develop offshore from the New South Wales coastline throughout Wednesday morning, and this one here will funnel along plenty of decent rainfall accumulations along the New South Wales coastline throughout Tuesday late evening and into Wednesday morning and into early Wednesday afternoon, before it then clears off the coastline, moves a little bit further north. It looks like a good outbreak of thunderstorms possible late Wednesday afternoon and evening into the extreme northeastern corner of New South Wales, or a good outbreak, I'd use that term pretty loosely at this time, but an outbreak of severe thunderstorms possible up there. And then Thursday, plenty of thunderstorms also expected into the southeast of Queensland and into the northeast of New South Wales. Again, I wouldn't really get your hopes up if you're in Queensland for both Tuesday and Wednesday for thunderstorms. Thursday really looks like some good storms are going to be on the forecast, so we'll take a look at that in great detail in a future forecast update, with potentially severe ones around Chinchilla, Taroom, and out towards Edderswold. Good thunderstorms as well around Kingaroy and Toowoomba as well. Good thunderstorms also expected to extend into the scenic rim outside of Brisbane and the Gold Coast, but it is going to be a little bit of a wild card as to whether these thunderstorms get themselves into Brisbane or the Gold Coast, into the actual metro areas, and provide them with some much needed rainfall, because at this stage it doesn't look awfully likely. Good thunderstorms also expected on Friday night as well, and also more thunderstorms expected Saturday, so it actually looks like we're going to move into a pretty stormy period across the northeast of New South Wales and also into the southeast of Queensland from about Wednesday onwards, or Tuesday if you live in New South Wales, with up to 5 days of thunderstorms coming through, and potentially severe ones as well if you do live in the right areas of New South Wales. The hotspots being outside of the Barrington Tops and Tamworth, and then up into the northeast and the northern rivers, and then of course into the southeast of Queensland as well. They're not expecting as many thunderstorms into the southeast of Queensland, but still I would consider that a bit of a hotspot. As we pull this forecast forward though, things start to become a little bit more confusing. You know, that rainfall event, if you've been watching the videos for the last couple of days, that I said was completely cancelled on the forecast, and rightfully so, yesterday, I might have to eat my own words here, because look at this, the Eastern Weather is calling for it to be reincarnated by the looks of things, with some decent falls expected much later on into the forecast period by around sort of the 16th or 17th of January here. Now we still are going to see that weak low pressure system cross parts of New South Wales and Victoria as we push through the forecast towards the end of this week and into next weekend. You can see the thunderstorms there actually expected on Saturday and Sunday from that low pressure system, and this is the original one that we were expecting significant accumulations into the southeast of New South Wales for, and you can see that that's not expected to provide those significant rainfall accumulations anymore, but another system behind it is. Just a few days later, around the 17th or the 18th of January, you can see plenty of rainfall expected to be funneled ashore into the southeast of New South Wales. I really don't know what to make of this. Again, this might just be the other forecast models throwing out something towards the end of the forecast period, just for fun's sake, to be honest. The GFS forecast has also been suggesting it. In fact, they've kind of been suggesting kind of a merger of the two systems here, and the rainfall kind of being funneled ashore much earlier on into the forecast period, and then that other system kind of dragging up all of that moisture, if that makes sense. I mean, it's a really confusing forecast. It's really scrambling my head to kind of make sense of it. In short, rainfall accumulations, at least for the next kind of 6 or 7 days, make sense, at least on the forecast. You can see right out to the 12th of January, the rainfall accumulations making perfect sense for the southeast of Queensland into the northeast of New South Wales, and right down New South Wales and Victoria as well. With that rainfall, that's expected to fire up along the coastline Wednesday and Thursday, the 8th and 9th of January, respectively, in New South Wales. We're going to see some decent accumulations there, especially in towards some mountainous areas adjacent to the coastline. Triple figure rainfall accumulations are likely. Sydney as well, expecting about 130 millimetres, depending on what showers fire up there or exactly where the low pressure system is. I'd call that a valid forecast. Right now, I'd expect around 80 millimetres for Sydney, up to about 70 millimetres for Newcastle and Taree, Forster, and then further up the coastline towards Coffs Harbour, anywhere sort of between that 50 and 100 millimetre mark, with about 30 or 40% more rainfall falling as you get adjacent to the coastline further inland into some of the mountainous areas, with the Barrington Tops calling for up to about 130 to 140 millimetres of rainfall there. So some significant falls are possible, not overly likely at this time. I mean, the rainfall shouldn't be too heavy, definitely not exceeding triple figures for the majority of locations, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was some good rainfall on the forecast. But if you push this forward here, you can see that the rainfall accumulation has become a little bit more unbelievable, at least for this time of the year, especially with the Eastern Bev calling for about 220 millimetres outside of Mallacoota in the Victoria-New South Wales border. So we're going to touch on this in, again, a future forecast update, and I do apologise profusely again for not being able to make a reliable forecast beyond about the kind of the week-long period, at least in this instance for New South Wales and Victoria. It's just impossible to do it with how the forecast models are flip-flopping, and we're going to revisit this low-pressure system and this rainfall situation for New South Wales probably on Wednesday or Thursday when I know exactly what's going on here, because I just cannot give a straight answer on it right now. The forecast models are changing too much, and anyone who can give you a straight answer on it would also tell you that pigs can fly. It's just impossible right now. It is not going to happen. We just do not have the model certainty right now to call for rainfall or exact numbers in New South Wales, especially in parts of Victoria and Queensland, beyond about the 12th or 13th of January. That is enough talk for New South Wales, Queensland and Victoria as well. Spent a lot of time just getting through the forecast for those locations, but let's pull the forecast back to today and talk about heat that's expected to extend across interior parts of the nation, also down towards the southeast of the nation as well. Melbourne expecting a very warm top of 37, in fact 38 degrees today as well, so very warm temperatures there, already exceeding the 30s up to about 34 for Avalon outside of Geelong, and I think the Melbourne metro area is about to get itself over the 30 degree mark as well. Mildura as well, 32 degrees right now, temperatures warming up as well into interior parts of South Australia, with a maximum temperature of around 45 or 46 degrees expected today across interior parts of South Australia. A cool change expected to blow through later on tonight into early tomorrow morning. Those will bring much needed relief to parts of Victoria as well. You can see temperatures there expected to fall off a cliff later on tonight, but that cool change doesn't get in until about midnight for Melbourne, and as such those temperatures there will still certainly be into the 20s, even the high 20s Melbourne into later on this evening and into tonight. Warm temperatures expected throughout interior parts of Australia tomorrow. Same deal with Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday. Nothing too crazy until about next Friday and Saturday, when we're expecting temperatures to go up to about 46, 47 degrees again across the interior parts of Australia. That'll also mean another warm period across parts of Victoria and New South Wales, with warm temperatures expected around around Melbourne. Warm temperatures as well for Adelaide expected as we get later on into this week and into early next weekend. Those temperatures will then continue to rise across interior parts of South Australia and Queensland, with the daytime maximum up to about 47 degrees, even pushing 48 around Birdsville and Moomba by the 13th of January. Even warmer than that for the 14th. You can see temperatures here pushing up towards 49 degrees. And then temperatures finally, it looks like a bit of a grand finale coming through Wednesday, depending on what low pressure system comes through. 49 degrees expected outside of Moomba in the southwestern corner rather of Queensland. Temperatures right up to about 46 degrees expected outside of Mildura. And then Melbourne also expecting a top of 38 degrees by Wednesday by the looks of things. Now, of course, take this temperature forecast with a very heavy pinch of salt. It is going to get very warm, but we still don't know what's going to happen with the low pressure system forecast across interior parts of New South Wales, Queensland, Victoria and South Australia. So take it with a very heavy pinch of salt at this time. It's not likely to get this hot, but it is just a heads up that temperatures are likely to get uncomfortably hot across interior parts of Australia from this weekend onwards. That's enough talk about the heat, and that's enough talk about the general weather forecast for for Australia rather as a whole. Let's talk about the tropical forecast now. I've got a lot of stuff to get through here as well, and not much time to do it, so I'm really going to race through it here. Tropical low 08U still clinging to life here, about 500 nautical miles towards the southwest of West Island on the Cocos-Keeling Islands. Really struggling here with high levels of wind shear, but it's still managing to blow up some decent convection at this time around the centre of the system. I don't give this storm a fighting chance right now. It really isn't expected to do anything fancy, so we can completely discount that. Looking a little bit further on into the future, by Wednesday we're likely to see a fully blown tropical low over Christmas Island. This system here has a good chance of life and a pretty solid forecast ahead of it. By Thursday it's certainly going to be on its way to tropical cyclone status. In fact, it could actually be there by Friday morning into Friday afternoon. It looks like this system just might be a little bit too broad, a little bit too large to properly wrap itself up into a tropical cyclone. It'll likely reach peak intensity by Saturday morning, well offshore from Western Australia, before steady weakening starts on a Saturday evening and into early Sunday morning. Still, it looks like it does make a fighting shot at getting up towards Category 1 status, and if it does get to cyclone status, there's going to be not much in its way of getting towards Category 2 or 3 strength tropical cyclone status. It is going to be very far away from the West Australian coastline, and as such, no threat to land is suggested from either of these systems here. Looking a little bit further on into the forecast, though, we can see a weak tropical low expected to spin itself up, at least on the longer range forecast offshore from Western Australia. Now, we're likely to see some kind of big tropical splurge here. The GFS has actually been calling for this for a couple of weeks now, where we are going to be seeing some kind of tropical low / intense tropical cyclone beating down on the West Australian coastline by mid-January, even in towards late January, between the 15th and the 20th of January. That's a lot of Januaries in one sentence. You can see that the GFS is not calling for a monster cyclone, but certainly some low pressure system and some funky low pressure activity to happen along the West Australian coastline. What I can take away from this forecast is a chance of a monster cyclone, as to what the GFS and some of these awful Facebook guys have been saying is very unlikely right now. I don't think we're going to see a monster cyclone barreling towards Western Australia anytime soon, but I wouldn't be totally shocked if we saw some kind of weak cyclone / tropical low fire up sometime around mid-January. Still a lot of details in the forecast still to iron out. I don't really give it a fighting chance, but there is still that background chance we do see something there along the West Australian coastline. Right now, however, no systems are of any threat to land. We're not expecting tropical cyclone impacts across Western Australia for at least the next 3 weeks. There's nothing on the forecast either, and nothing really on the long range either as well. Over in the Gulf of Carpentaria and over in the Coral Sea, we haven't had any rumbles of activity either on the forecast, which is quite interesting, especially that the forecast is now going out into what I'd consider almost late January, and with nothing on the forecast, it's starting to be a bit of a wonder how quiet can this cyclone season actually get around the Coral Sea, and if it's going to have a bit of a burst towards the end of the season. We do see a weak low pressure system fire up off the Cape York Peninsula on the GFS forecast on the 17th and the 18th of January, but again, I would take that with a very heavy pinch of salt. The GFS is probably just saying this to keep people interested. It's obviously not, but still, you get what I'm saying, that this system is exceedingly unlikely at this time. In short, nothing in the way of cyclone impacts expected for Queensland, the Northern Territory and Western Australia for what looks to be at least the next 3 weeks. Western Australia will have plenty of tropical lows to talk about, 3 of them forecasted in the next 2 weeks, with one of them actually being the chance of getting up towards tropical cyclone status. Of course, still no threat to land from those systems. And then for the Gulf of Carpentaria and the Coral Sea, there's that kind of 5% or 10% chance of a background tropical low kind of firing up, but again, I wouldn't really bet the farm on it at this time. That's a lot of yibba yabba about tropical cyclones. Again, if I've left your head spinning, then please do let me know in the comment section down below. If you have enjoyed this video, then please do consider leaving a like and also subscribing to the channel as well. The support lately has been much appreciated. We've had a great start to 2025 as well. Any questions or comments, leave them in the comment section down below, or feel free to send me an email as well. My email is publicly listed in the channel description, and I would love to hear from you and answer any of your questions. That is all for me today, and I'll catch you all in the next storm. Goodbye.